Contain data and carry an AC and call the meeting to order and start with the roll call and contain data again.
Troy Kaolin, David Tarnas, Eric Connolly,
Mike Robinson.
Jeff Melrose, sorry, from the
Doc Payton.
R&D.
Lori Obra.
And then can have the people who are guests, but then give their names.
Blake Watson.
Springer K. Carrie Marks.
Okay, and we've got some introductions, review the agenda, we'll take statements from the public first. Review and approval of the minutes, discussion of Act 203, legislative update, microloan update, and then we'll get requests from commissioners and set the next meeting. So we can start with statements from the public. Do you have any statements from the public today?
I'm Springer Kay. I'm the manager of the Big Island Invasive Species Committee, and I'm here just mainly to introduce myself and let you know I'm going to try to come to as many of the Ag Commission meetings as I can, just to try and keep up to date on important issues. I think for those of you who know, this has been around for about 20 years. We've been heavily focused on forest pests in the past. We want very much to be more relevant in agricultural issues, and really mostly in that capacity, just being an information sharing clearinghouse, but just knowing what your concerns are, and do our best to respond to those kinds of things as much as possible. So I hope you don't mind advising us along with the council and the mayor in what you're doing.
That'd be fine. You're with invasive species?
It's the Big Island Invasive Species Committee. We're a university project that basically operates like a nonprofit.
So kind of crossover between university and nonprofit. Have you started doing any focus on agricultural pests right now?
Most of our work is still are on target species that we try to eradicate that can impact both forest and ag, but it's not the things that farmers are really struggling with right now, the things we see as future pests. For example, we are the group doing access to eradication on the Big Island. Most of our other work is pests.
So do you work with plants too, invasive plants too?
Right.
So Miconia and...
So we no longer do Miconia. It got away from us, I think, before we ever started on it 20 years ago. And but we are working on some Albizia issues right now. Not because we think we can eradicate it from the Big Island, but because it is such an extreme public safety issue. And as we're seeing more and more, it's a fallow agricultural growth issue, really increasing the cost of getting back on the land. Other than that, we do a lot of legislative stuff. So I heard a lot of talk about bills. I did bring some information about 2 bills, but I don't know if it's appropriate to give that out. So maybe I'll just leave the information with you.
When we get to the legislative committee, we can discuss it then.
That's good. Do you work with bringing in, like, I guess, I call them pests, but do you bring in insects control?
No, all of that is through the Hawaii Department of Agriculture.
Okay.
Mostly stay away from insects because they require such a high level of expertise, and we can stick with Department of Ag or CNR for that. But we'll do things like we control abandoned coffee fields to try and reduce source populations for coffee berry borer. So nothing that involved a lot of knowledge about the critter, just how to kill coffee trees.
Okay.
Are you real quick?
Yes, I'm the business manager. Oh,
What
God.
What are the 2 bills that you
I wanted
mentioned?
to talk about 1902.
Which one, SP or HB?
Sorry, HB 1902,
Okay,
which is a no net loss of hunting areas bill,
okay,
and then a kind of a opposite HCR 98.
okay, great, thanks.
Okay. Yeah, thanks a lot.
And are you let me know for joining your BISC gathering.
Right. So
When's your next meeting?
it's going to be in May.
Okay.
It's May 4th.
Send me a note.
Sure.
Okay. Is there any other people in the public who want to make their statements or report?
I wanted to just make a comment about, there was a meeting that Gregory Ligon held in Pahoa about a month ago concerning people who had papaya, and there was a few other concerns that people had in the area that were growing papaya organically. They wanted to see if there was some contamination of the GMO strain in the papaya. So Richard Manshart from UH-Manoa came over just for that meeting and took everyone's samples. And people from Hamakua and Pahoa all gave samples, and 5 out of the 6 people that gave samples all had some contamination in them. So the questions from some of the people that came out of that meeting were, is there a way for the county, and I don't know if this is the appropriate place to voice this concern, but is there a way that the county could provide maybe some free testing? I know the testing is $3 per tree, but it kind of prevents farmers from wanting to do a large-scale farming when it's $3 a tree to test the GMO for the GMO variety inside. So a lot of them don't do it. I think it's happening, so it's a small percentage that are actually doing it according to the university.
So is that kind of for the seed supply, you're testing papaya, so you get the seed and grow it? You don't
So
need to
you test
convention?
what it is, you test your trees by testing the youngest growth of the leaf. That's the easiest way to find is the gene inside of it. And so you get to be a farmer who's doing non-GMO, you have to actually do samples of the first growth. And you should do all the trees, but I think most people can't afford it, so they just do a couple of the trees to get samples.
So do random samples, and is that for trying to get like non-GMO certification? Is that what they're after, or organic?
To be organic and to say non-GMO, that would be the case here. One other thing I wanted to ask, I was at a meeting 2 meetings ago here in Hilo, and one of the people that works for the mayor, I'm not too sure what his name was mentioning something about Bill 113, and was saying that it applied only to commercial GMO and not recreational GMO. And I don't know if that was an offhand comment or if that really has any bearing. So what was that about? It'd be nice to get a clarification about that comment.
What is recreational GMO?
Yeah, something he said. I was looking for it in the minutes and it wasn't listed, so it's probably becoming irrelevant. So just wanted to see if that was
Oh, so,
Can I ask a question?
yes.
The seeds that you're getting for that, are these are people using their own seed to produce this, or are you buying the Kapoho variety seeds that are put out by the university, or is there another source of clean seed that's available for growing your product?
So what we know for sure is that the university sells seed that is non-GMO. And other growers, they try to maintain purity of seed and they distribute those seeds, but sometimes there's still some foul-ups and obviously there's contamination issues.
So if you were wanting to grow a certainty about that, you could simply buy your seed. Just if you want to grow a certainty on a GMO seed, you'd buy that seed from the Papaya Industry Association. You could buy a source of clean seed, guaranteed, right? I mean, there is a source of guaranteed clean seed.
Most of the time, I heard at one time there was a problem with even UH's samplings, but it comes down to be sure you do it yourself, and you bag your own flowers, but it's expensive and it takes a long time to get enough seed supply together to make it viable a large enough amount for a big farm.
So, I think with organic, it probably varies a little bit from certification agency. You start with a non-GMO papaya,
Right.
and you grow it, that will still be a non-GMO papaya, even if it gets contaminated as potential GMO seed. So but with the non-GMO certification, I don't know what their status on that. So if someone starts with a non-GMO plant and gets contaminated, does that then contaminate their plant, even though this, like the stem growing at the top will be non-GMO, but the
Right.
seed itself could be if it's got cross-contaminated pollen. Is that-
Current organic standards say that you can go ahead and have GMO seed inside of an organic fruit, which is odd, but that's the way they do it. And for Japan's and for the ones we export to Japan, it's the same case.
What about-
Those are non-GMO, those aren't organic, but they're just non-GMO, but it's the same criteria. They can go ahead and have GMOs in the seeds, but the plant and the fruit is non-GMO according to their rules.
Okay, I was curious about that. Well, thanks a lot for your comments. So what you'd like to know is if there could be a source of funding to fund testing.
Yeah.
Can I ask you for a clarification? I think I heard that the fruit the fruit is non-GMO, but the seed inside the fruit is GMO?
This is according to the organic standards.
It can be if you get pollen contamination. And so, generally speaking, the seeds are destroyed. Now, if you're making papaya seed salad dressing and trying to sell that as organic, I say you can crush it.
I was going to say, where do you eat the seed? I mean, the
That's the
issue about
problem.
consuming GMO products.
I don't think it really makes sense to say that's organic, the seeds aren't organic.
But
That's the current.
what the practicalities of that are, it's similar to the pesticides and organics too. But it's, the only practical way to test it would be test each and every papaya, in which case you can't sell them because you're testing them all.
Right.
A few bucks a papaya.
And the testing for the seeds is way more expensive than testing for the leaf. It's a whole different test. And it's,
Thank you.
So
New
that-
members of the public just came in and
We're right at the beginning, we've done introductions. This is a time period where comments from the public are welcome, like under 3 minutes.
we're ready for you whenever you'd like to make a statement.
My testimony? Yes. I was hoping Billy was going to be here, so I'm going to act like one of you is.
Could you introduce yourself?
Okay, my name is Mary Leigh Drake, and I am not in favor of big ag and GMO. And that's just because of my personal history. Less than a year ago, I had a blood pressure reading of 220. I was told by the urgent care physician that I would be dead in 3 years. So what I did was eliminate genetic modification food. But I went through this big brouhaha and practice it, so I'm going to do this. But my concern is with health. All I did to lose 50 pounds was stop eating anything I saw advertised on television. But anyway, here's my speech. Good morning. I'm going to refrain from saying aloha right now, because somehow it's lost its meaning, at least for me. It's as if some people can parrot it, but they're unable to feel it. Aloha is love. Aloha is not about suing the county of Kauai in order to continue spraying toxic chemicals on children. That's the opposite of aloha. The county is not even asking them to stop spraying altogether. They're humbly asking the toxic chemicals to be identified so that physicians may be able to counteract the poisonings that are sickening our citizens of Kauai. And the county may lose to a high-priced corporate lawyer sellout. Dear God in heaven, what is it going to take to wake people up who continually support big ag corporations who have such dirty and dishonest reputations? What's it going to take? What's it going to take? Oh, I know. Wait for it. Wait for it. Ka-ching! I can show you the money. Go to Island Naturals in Kona on any given weekday at lunchtime, and you won't find a parking space anywhere near it because it's packed, and their food is expensive. Ka-ching! Look at the preference, at the rise in preference for organic, non-GMO produce. Our very own island, appropriately called Hawaii, is the last remaining island in Hawaii that we can say, we're claiming, we're not GMO free, but we're GMO limited. Okay, people will still flock to our organic island and pay the big bucks. Ka-ching! Look at the rise in popularity of Mountain Apple's grass-fed beef. I paid $30 for a roast. He's a teacher, but I paid $30, and it was the best quality and lasted forever. On Sunday, I made Mountain Apple corned beef, unbelievably good and perfectly seasoned. I've always opted to buy Safeway corned beef for $1.99 a pound. Never again. I will happily pay the extra $1.50 per pound because it is so worth it. In fact, I'm going to purchase another one today. Ka-ching! I could go on, but I want to bring up a word, and I had wanted it to direct it to Billy Kanoe, and I am. The word is stewardship. I wept, and I was so happy when you signed Bill 113. I only met you once, and it was the King Kamehameha Kona Beach Hotel. You were the keynote speaker, and I wept then, listening to your words. You have the stewardship of Hawaii. No one could be more surprised than me to find myself here right now. Really surprised. But I do know why. I want to remind you of the little boy you were who had big dreams against adverse circumstances. You know, anti-GMO people are awesome. We'll share everything, organic seeds, practices, plants, produce. We can start working with the UH with sustainable agriculture. I can just see you, Billy, on a field with a shovel, not for the bullshit, but for our land. I see you working with troubled youth as they learn and marvel at all they are capable of growing. Just like us, plants need a little water, a little food, and a lot of love. Thank you. And maybe aloha. I'll have to see what you do. All the world is watching, Mayor Kanoi. Show us to the world as stewards of this land we have temporary custody of. Don't let it be destroyed. Malama pono.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing all the
Thank
updates.
you.
Yeah.
Are you
No, you
good?
can-
Are you good? My questions?
No, you can, next question, you can stay for a minute too, because we're discussing
Okay.
demolition. Okay, but,
Let me just sneak back here. Okay, thank you.
well, one of the things that you do in the commission is we work with all agriculture, and one of the things that you do is we are looking at supporting the local food movement. Sustainability was part of the mission that was started like, I think 2 years ago in the county plan. So anti-GMO and trying to get healthy food is one aspect of it. Trying to develop as much food source on the island that can be distributed to the island is another part of it. And so some of our discussions are on that, and some of our discussions are on, other aspects, like, the meat industry and trying to get a good local grass-fed meat. And so it would be nice to integrate in, the anti-GMO movement with, in a sense, the pro-sustainability movement at the same time, because it's a lot of energy you put on it. So thanks for the amount of work and emotion that you put into the presentation.
I like my food.
Okay. Is there any other, I think that's comment from the public. Next on the agenda is the review and approval of the minutes. So, does anyone have any changes we should make or update?
No, I move to approve.
Second.
The minutes?
Yeah.
Hold on.
I have a recommended change, and it comes under a piece that I had referred to on page.
Excuse me,
2.
hold on. So it was Tarnas and Mr. Robertson?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And it comes under the second bullet, the third square there that said, that the county had press release sent out to each county of Hawaii, page 2 of 6. I'll give you my markup copy with wording. That's
All right.
useful. But what I wanted to do was simply express that what we did do in terms of outreach, it says no further outreach was provided, but that's not true. We did contact landowners and industry associations to encourage them to, that what we knew needed to be registered to do so.
GMO registration.
Yes, this is related to GMO registration. So it simply said, the way it was written, it sounded like, we just let press releases and press coverage be our outreach, and in fact, that we did more than that, from a staff level, to get the word out to talk to folks who were doing it.
So do you have specific word changes?
Yeah, I have a specific set of word changes that I can give to her that would just.
Tell you how to put it on.
Okay. I would just, aside from, I would say press releases were sent to the county of Hawaii. There were media pieces in
And
the
from
news.
the county of Hawaii?
Were sent by the county of Hawaii. And there were media pieces to in the newspaper, period. Comma, and staff made contacts with multiple landowners and industry groups to make sure they were aware of the deadline, period.
And delete that no other publicity.
Yeah, no other publicity or outreach.
I'm
was
going to
provided.
repeat that. Press releases were sent by the county of Hawaii, and there were media pieces in the newspaper, comma, and staff made contacts with multiple landowners and industry groups.
To make sure they were aware of the deadline.
And then you're saying,
And
then
you strike out no other publicity or
Sure.
outreach to be provided. I just didn't want to look like we had not done that.
Yeah, I wasn't here, but I did pick up on a couple of things. On page 3, where it's about the third paragraph down, public attendee Steve Lopez. has been receiving calls as to Act 2013. Is that a typo?
Yeah, typo should be 201.
Okay.
Sorry, what was the,
Page 3 of 6, where it says Act 2103 in the middle of the page. Should be 203, right?
203. 203.
oh, sorry, excuse me, okay,
And
great.
then on page 6, at the top, it says, information by Kona Development, Community Development Plan Group, Department of Land and Homeland's Humu'ula Plan, et cetera. The proper term is Aina Mauna Legacy Program. Aina Mauna Legacy Program.
That's why we need a
Yeah,
presentation.
Humu'ula is, huh?
That's why we need your presentation. So we get the name right.
Aina Mauna Legacy Program.
Humu'ula is an ahupua'a within the Aina Mauna Legacy area.
Okay, yeah, you weren't here to, I think.
No, I wasn't here to
Yeah.
make it clear, so. And
Okay,
then, right after that, confirm next date, time, and location, there's no time listed. You have the date, you have the location, but there's no time. I just
Alright.
wondered if that should be included.
okay.
Okay, so,
See, I missed the meeting, but I had lots of time to
yeah,
read.
so, is there any objection to making all those changes? Okay, so then, you approve the minutes as amended? Yes, as amended. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all opposed? Okay, so the next, the next part of our agenda is the update of the County of Hawaii agriculture programs.
Okay. I've got a couple of quick, no, I don't have to pronounce, just a couple of quick topics. First, just as you're well aware, the GMO registration has been put on hold. The court case, we really can't talk about it, don't know much about it, it's all in kind of legal hands today, so that registration is kind of going to go through a legal route for a time. And I think the next hearing sometime in like the 28th or something, there's another hearing on
March
the topic.
24th.
March 24th.
How much was collected before the lawsuit?
I don't know that I can tell you that. I would tell you that the bulk of them were non-GMO registration, the vast bulk, and they were almost all Kamehameha Schools applications because they sent out letters to all their people, and people sent us we had lots of people saying, why am I doing this? Do I have to do this? What am I doing? So we provided them, a lot of them, over 100 of them I think came from that group, but I can't say anything more.
Okay, so they're your best outreach.
Yeah, they do. They send, yes, legally significant letter. Next topic is, one of the things, last year we did a workshop or conference at UH with Don Straney, kind of trying to figure out what we could focus on together in the agricultural area. And one of the recommendations of that was to focus on the development of new farmers. So we've been doing that partly in relationship to our use of supplemental funds and how we, when we get applications to support supplemental, to support programs that help to develop farmers. But we're now in conversation with UH to work on a conference sometime in May probably that will really be a gathering of the practitioners who do that work, who are involved in working with farmers, to see what works and what are the things that they think are the most important. And but there are programs around the state, many of them based here as well, that are actively engaged in trying to develop new farmers. And so the question is what works and what's getting traction and how can we help to pull together that community of practice so that they can talk to each other and work on that topic. So that's an emerging piece. We did talk last meeting briefly about real property tax reform. I think you may see something at our next meeting on that topic. It wasn't ready for this one, but there is kind of a fast track for some of that conversation emerging from the administration. So we'll see some, testing some ideas and thoughts. You guys are taking some input from everyone, different approaches to that.
Could you say there's kind of a deadline in June?
Well, you're trying to get it done so that people have time to do whatever filings they need to do. So June, July, there are some fixed deadlines and some flexible deadlines, but I think the purposes, you've got to get all the way through a council process and a rulemaking process in some of this as well, so. That'll be clear at our next meeting. And the last thing I wanted to talk about was simply that our supplemental, our annual solicitation for proposals for economic development grants for year 14-15 is out. The deadline is April 25th for folks who want to make applications to that. These are for nonprofit organizations. There are categories, but there is an agricultural category for which there's, I don't know, I think we gave about $180,000 last year. It's in that range. Probably next year. It won't know until the budget's done. And so that will give us a, so just for your own self, if you want to know more about that, it's on the website. And it is a vehicle for being focused on how do we help organizations doing what they're doing. And so we do a little bit of outreach to folks to try and get them to help focus on things that have got long-term impact. And so we get about 2 or 3 times the number of applications that we actually have money to fund. So it is competitive. I think it's a $25,000. That's kind of the working cap. But we support a lot of industry groups doing industry gathering, education, development, some marketing, some new farmer training, that kind of outreach.
On GMO, defense of the, I guess is it a law or is it defense of the GMO law? Who's the point person for that, or how's that being handled? Who's in charge of defending the law?
Mike Budovic, Corporation Counsel.
Okay, so that's their job basically, to defend the laws.
Right.
Okay. Any comments for Jeff? Okay, thank you for the report and update, and making it pretty succinct. We appreciate that. The next item on our agenda is the implementation of Act 203, and that's now basically a starting point to work from. That's that building permits, agriculture building permits exemption. And I think what we're trying to do is either add our comments to what I've done, or make up your own comments, and then pass that all over to the Department of Public Works, and then they can adjust that back to us next meeting, I suppose. So I guess, I don't know, you got much chance. Did people have a chance to make up your own questions besides the ones that I did?
Hey, one question I had on, your letter is, what happens if the food safety initiatives come about and affect some of the buildings, especially if it's used for food cleaning or packaging? It may be the food safety initiatives that will have an impact on the building itself. How does that going to play a role?
Well, I would think that there's someone separate. You have the building permit for the building, and then if you choose to do something with it that's going to require food safety, then you'd have to be adding stuff to the building to make it food safety compliant. If what you add to the building then kicks it out of the exemption, then you have to probably apply for the building permit. That would be my first take on it, but I don't know that's for sure.
Part of the food safety has to do with flooring.
Right.
You can't have gravel floors. You have to have concrete. So that's going to add up the cost of the building. So, if you don't do it up front, it's hard to go and retrofit a flooring. That was the only concern.
Yeah.
I think we brought this up when we had the representative from the building department here, and he said if it was going to be used for ag processing and it triggered food safety issues, then you wouldn't want to go through this unpermitted process. You would want to go through a permitted process. process in order to be able to meet those standards. That was what I remember him saying when he was here.
So, but basically what that says is the responsibility for that rests on, I couldn't call them farmers, but the person who decided to put up the building, it's their responsibility to choose what route they want to go with. Because if they,
What he was describing, when if the person comes in beforehand, and that's why he was encouraging people to come in before they build the building. According to law, they can come in after it's built and get the exemption. But he's encouraging people to come in before, talk about it, and then he can help flag it, saying, oh, you really need to get a permit because of what you're
Yeah, to
proposing.
mitigate the possible.
So that's
a problem.
Yeah, so he's trying to encourage people to come in before, even though the law says you can come in after it's done and get the exemption. Am I remembering that correctly?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think that's the right way to carry that. And it is up to the farmer whether they take the exemption route or not, and if they're smart, they'll come in and talk about it, because a lot of the buildings we're talking about aren't, are small farm sheds and shacks. They're not necessarily set up for that, but there's certainly a cluster of them that are gonna feel this issue coming as food safety certification becomes a bigger issue.
That is a relevant issue, though, I think, for us to bring up. I know that from the building permit side of things, they try to say, come in and talk to us, but if we see this as an issue, it may be something that we should ask the ag extension folks, the people who are out working with the farmers, to be able to tell them, doing some sort of outreach. If you're planning on doing anything related to ag processing, food production, you gotta get a permit. So it's something for us to, at least we could bring up with the building folks and let them know that it's a good idea to do your outreach to get people to come in beforehand, because you avoid problems.
Right.
yeah, if you think, I was suggesting to use the now template, and you're looking like water tanks, you're looking at, storage buildings, those sort of things, then you're not crossing over the food safety or food processing issue. In food processing, then you have to see what level of food processing is allowed, and you have to see, how the cottage industry law is moving, if that gains more traction. Does anyone else have?
Yeah, I would just say, I want to thank the Chairman for taking the time to write down his thoughts, because that's, when we went to talk to Public Works, talked to Brandon, the deputy, Brandon Gonzalez, he said, tell us what your concerns are, and then let's give us some ideas of how to respond to them. And because we didn't get any, we couldn't kind of
Nobody's gonna bring back again.
nobody, he didn't want to send somebody if you didn't have, actually spend enough time to think about it ahead of time. So, they will come, and if we send them a body of questions, and I think he did a good start here, and I think you all ought to throw some ideas onto the topic, and so that at a future meeting, we can actually have that conversation. But they were just wanting you folks to do your homework on specifically what questions do you have, and then because Eric, as Neil said when he was here, he's more than willing to come back, but his bosses were saying, show us what your questions are, and then see if it's enough to make it, take him, here for a while.
The stuff that they need to send someone here. So if anyone either wants to add questions to this, and we can do that right now, I say we can forward, if you want to, we can forward this on to them as it is. And if you want to add to it, you need more time to think about it, so if you want to add some stuff, even up to the next meeting, maybe we should, can we open up the avenue, we go ahead and let people just send it directly, copy to us, but directly to them, or does it have to go through the meeting first?
It'd be best if it were one.
It'd be nice if it was one.
It would be nice if it was one document.
I would encourage that.
questions.
And I believe that it would come from the R&D director as your recommendations. yeah?
Well, as your questions, right?
As your questions, yeah.
You're not all recommendations, but I'd say if you gave yourself a time frame as a group and you encourage people to make take the time just to think about this, think, what are the 3 thoughts you got, and put them down. Well, add them together and we can send them out off as a formal thing to Public Works, Building Department, and give that to them to think about. And then I'm sure they're more than willing to come and talk to us about it.
Or you could actually go through this right now and finalize this, and this can
You
be
could do that
sent
as well.
off right now, because we got the time, and it's on the agenda.
So maybe if you can finalize this and send that, then When they respond to this, well, it's the next set of questions.
So just to get to the question that you had mentioned, Rodney, if we could add, if the building, a proposed building is used for, let me just read it, see if it makes sense. If the proposed building is used for agricultural processing that requires food safety certification, how is the applicant informed that permits are going to be required?
I would say processing and packing.
And packing. So if we could add that.
Okay, so I guess put that down here as number 6.
Number 6, yeah.
Okay.
Let's just do that. So you want, I can read it more slowly if you want that.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, I think you should write it down and send it to us, and send it rather than expect it in the, you want in the minutes, or do you want to?
Well, if you could just tell me it right now, and it'll be on the tape, but, you know, and I
All
can
right.
verify that. Go ahead.
If the proposed building is used for agricultural processing or packing that requires food safety certification, how is the applicant informed that building permits are required?
So maybe we could put a proposal to send this.
Can I repeat the question? Can I repeat
Yeah,
it
go ahead.
on a record? If proposed building is used for agriculture processing or packaging that requires food safety certification, how is applicant informed that building permits are required?
Yeah, yes.
That would be number 6 on this list
Yeah.
of questions.
Yeah, so maybe we need a proposal to go ahead and work on this and then send this on right now. Do we have to initiate that somehow? It's on the agenda, but I don't know if we can just.
Well, let's just finish adding to it, and then we can make a motion to send
Okay,
the
good.
revised.
Okay, gotcha.
I just want to make the point that the question here is, it's not that they're required, they may be required. And you're not required to meet building permit requirements just because you're building a packing shed for food safety certification. But you can't get away with simplicity if you're going to try and get it food safety certified. So you could build a food safety certified packing house without building permits if you met the requirements of food safety certification. That I think is a true statement, and I'm not sure quite how to frame the question here, but just because you're doing it for food safety doesn't mean
I don't
that
think
it's
you-
required.
I don't
I don't think
think
you could.
Public Works' mission is to comply with food safety.
No,
issues.
they have no concern,
The
that's
only
why.
thing they need to comply with is certified kitchens,
Mhm.
I think. I don't think the food safety that's coming down
Right. It's
initiatives,
not.
I don't think
Public
it's part
Works.
of their mission.
That's right.
So they're not required, at the end of
So
this,
they're
it
not
just says
required.
that they would be required. It's not required, it just could be required, I guess.
So in theory, somebody could build a processing facility and ask for the exemption and say, well, I'm not gonna, I'll comply with all our permits. But then once it's built, they can go ahead and start operating, and we don't find out about that because it's an enclosed building until somebody starts getting sick and it gets traced back to the.
I don't think it's
No,
processing. Processing requires you to have some degree of certified kitchen,
Yeah.
whether it's a minimum or full certification. But a packing has no requirement to be a certified kitchen to any degree.
Like a fruit packing operation.
That's right.
And food safety right now is undefined. It's being defined, but it is undefined. And my guess is it's gonna be something like the organic rules, or the supplement rules, that it's gonna be a long time before it's fully defined and implemented. And it's working from a couple different directions. It's a market-driven direction, there's a legal direction, and then there's also cottage industry moving to exempt people who are selling to each other from that. So all that is basically, Public Works isn't gonna have any handle on that at all. It's just gonna be a person who's working with their markets that's gonna have a handle on whether their food is marketable or not. So that's where the responsibility will lie with the person who's doing the marketing of the food.
And that probably will be the answer back from Public Works. We won't be able to, because this isn't our Julian.
They can't, they don't even have,
The words, the language I was suggesting for number 6, instead of permits are required, let's do it, permits may be required. But I think this is just pointing out where there's a disconnect.
Right.
And let's ask the
Right.
question, so we can get the answer back from DPW saying, we can't tell them this, because it's not our Juliana. So at least we find out that there's a gap and a disconnect there.
Okay, does anyone else want to add a 7?
Again, just a clarification though for Rodney. Rodney, so if I'm packing fruit into boxes, I need a concrete floor?
With the initiatives that's coming down, you need water supply, you need latrine access and all that type of deal. Most of the orchards really just put up a put-on roof on 4 posts and start packing on the ground.
Yeah, like avocado, coffee.
Yeah, that's
Papaya.
what everything.
Right.
Bananas.
Which is why you're told to wash your fruit before you eat it, right?
Yeah, but the new regulations are gonna be a lot stricter than what it is right now.
Much stricter. I don't think it'll be as strict as Hassel, but it'll be a lot stricter.
So these are proposed regulations.
There are proposed, and some of the packing houses are trying to comply with food safety certification.
Partly because they have certain markets that already require it,
That's right.
right? So it's a market-driven
It's
issue, it's
market-driven.
not regulatory-driven.
Right, yeah, it's right now, it's USDA open comment period on small section after small section of the law, and groups like Cornucopia are sending out, activating people if they think it's gonna put people out of business, so it's a long process, because once they get the comments, they still gotta drop the rules.
Right.
Once they drop the rules, everyone's gonna sue them, so they go through that.
The reason I asked my question is, again, I missed last week, and I'm looking at the Maui draft, I assume this is a draft application.
That's for the building exemption, right?
Yeah, and the last one says, structures over 1,000 square feet. 12B says storage or processing buildings for crops are exempt. So they're okay with that. I assume they have some other thing in place about food
They
safety.
may, but look, I have had experience with the food crops, how they pack. The other thing is rambutan. When I was exporting rambutan, we had problems with ants in a container. And we had a whole container, $10,000 worth of rambutan shipped back from California. And part of it is because you're packing on the ground. And so there is an issue, and I believe the issue is a good issue, to have this food safety in place. Not only for your own good, but it protects other people. Because if you're trying to go through a co-op and fill a container, it's not only your goods, it's other goods, but everybody gets shipped back.
Any other comments or additions to this document? Okay, so then,
Can I suggest that maybe we take what you've done, but we also send it to the folks who aren't here, because Tim may have a couple of quick questions. Say, look, we're gonna send this note out, here it is. If we'll give you 5 days to respond, and then we're gonna send it out so that they come back.
okay,
for
you're
next
telling
meeting.
them not, so it's not stall.
Yeah, right, no, I would give them a comment period and a time frame to come back and say, look, we don't hear from you, then you don't got it, but, Tim has a particular set of rancher issues, and I think there may be a couple of other folks who might.
Okay, so then do we need a proposal to send this on, or?
So I make a motion that we send this as amended with any additional items that come in within the next week.
Okay. Any seconds for that? Second. Okay, any further comments? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any approved? Any consent, say nay, and I think the proposal has been approved.
So then this goes to R&D, right? And then from R&D to DPW?
Right, with a little circuit, so it goes out to the members who aren't here, so they have a chance to comment.
Right, but after it's finished, the transmission goes from us to R&D, R&D to DPW.
Right, so they should, so it should all move within about a week or so.
So do you want to propose a deadline for the other commissioners that are not here? Do you want to just
We-
say a week, 7 days from today?
Yeah.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a more exciting one, the update on what made the crossover.
So the long list that you have includes what made the crossover this session and last session. So that's why some of these dates have 13 as the date. So if you look at some of these, you're wondering why did I include them on here? Like if you look at the 15 and 14, 15, 16, those are all dated March 2013. The reason why I included them in here because they're still alive. They've been in suspended animation for a year. And they could be brought up at any time this week to move them. It's unlikely that they're gonna move, but they are officially still viable until the end of this week. At the end of this week is the first lateral. That means you've got to get to the final committee on your referral. And so then, this is the second year of biennium, so when bills die, they really die. It's not suspended animation or zombie bills or anything like that. These are real, and they'll really die. So the numbers will drop off precipitously from here on. What I did is, so I included all the bills that were relevant, I thought, were in here. I did not include resolutions, concurrent resolutions. We heard about HCR 98, I did not include them in here. And I'm sure I missed some things too. This is just the ones that I could notice. What I did is I included in this sheet just a list of ones that sort of came to the top that I thought were particularly interesting. I thought, it's that a little over a page, a whole bunch of different bills, and then I tried to organize them in my email to you by category. And so the email is where, under invasive pest species control and management, there's a bunch of bills. Under local food production, there's some bills. Exempting ag structures, there's even some more bills to exempt more ag structures from building permits. Education, association conservation district funding bills, labeling bills, GMO regulation bill, Whitefield Valley bill, and ag water systems bills. So, these are bills that I identified as ones that we had previously discussed in the Ag Commission. So that's why that was our short list. A number of them have been a topic, where it's the coffee bear borer control research funding, the macadamia felted coccidiosis control funding, or as Commissioner Chenoy brought up, the nursery stock industry regulation regarding pest eradication for interstate transport, and civil liability of those nursery stock companies that are actually producing and selling them. And then there's a little fire ant control. So, the Invasive Species Council funding, those are all in there and they're moving. The printout, this long printout here, is as of last Friday, and things have already changed since then. There's already been some hearings on some of these bills, and as I say, at the end of this week, those that didn't make it to the last committee are going to die. So on one particular bill, let's say if we wanted to take a look at the nursery stock issue, there's SB 2347, and that's on page 5 of the printout. And that one was scheduled for decision making yesterday. I failed to check to see what happened, but Jeff, you said you checked on that one.
Yes.
So it's at the top of page 5, SB 2347. The decision making yesterday apparently was to pass with amendments.
Yes.
And the dollar figure is blank, which is very common. And then Jeff also said that it was re-referred. So instead of having a triple referral, it now has a double referral. Is that right, Jeff?
Yes, and it looked like it referred just to agricultural and finance.
So it looks like it dropped
Judiciary.
judiciary as a referral. So now it's going to go right to the final committee, which it has to do by the end of this week.
Well, this is basically a tightening of the export of invasives by the person or the entity doing it, right?
Yeah.
Makes it a little tighter.
Very
Makes it more
tight. It makes it, the individual is civilly liable
Yeah.
for any invasive species that gets in that nursery stock and is shipped intrastate. And so for the industry's perspective, Commissioner Chenoy could give us a much better ground truth on that.
Our concern really is that we don't have a treatment that is 100% guaranteed. We are also shipping through means of public transportation that is not a treatment cleared facility either. So even though our industry is self-policing voluntarily and we're using University of Hawaii and PBARC's recommendations for pest disinfestation, if we do get hitchhikers on our product, we, by law, if this law passes, are civilly liable in an imperfect world. And the problem with this law is that it only impacts floriculture and ornamentals. It specifically identifies only our industry. It does not go to other industries. It says nothing about auto movement, construction movement, building material movement, food. It says nothing about other modes of transportation, except that if our industry is caught, we are civil liable. So we feel it's very discriminatory. It only selects our industry as the model. And we feel that there's other ways of regulation, especially in an imperfect world. That's why we oppose to it.
If they modified it so that, like say you ship plants for Oahu and it's found it has low fire ant in it, you don't know where that low fire ant came from, is what I'm hearing you say. It could have been on the ship, it could have been anywhere, it
For
could have been
example-
even where it showed up at.
For example, in landscape, if someone exports hapu logs from the Big Island, it's not regulated. People can ship hapu logs anywhere in the state because it's not coming under the jurisdiction of floriculture ornamentals.
So that modification that you guys were talking about, Jeff and Commissioner Furnace, I'm looking at this last paragraph,
I don't-
establishes an affirmative responsibility on the consent of any landscape material products, agricultural goods, construction materials, equipment, vehicles, soil or sand. That sounds more comprehensive than,
I think it's getting rewritten right now.
okay.
Yeah, I didn't see what the amendment was. I can't.
But I-
It wasn't published as of this morning.
But I hear what you're saying, and, you know, I mean, to be civilly liable for things that you may not have control is not a good thing, I don't think.
Well, we just feel there's other ways of writing good law
Yeah.
that gets to the same goal.
What if they traced it back to the source, and it would have to be identified as
Negligent.
as the fire ants are in your shipment, and also you have them in your nursery, then that kind of like, yeah, they may not have hitched a ride on the wave, but they're there anyways, and you should have done something about it. Would you guys be more supportive
I
or something
think,
like that?
I think if our industry already is self-policing under the USDA and Department of Agriculture and the educational program of UH, we already are pest infestation of pests are already being treated on our nurseries. So if you have a nursery that is not in compliance, there is already regulation in place where they'll lose certification to Department of Ag at this time already. So the question now arises, what is Department of Ag doing in working with production agriculture, in an educational program through university as well as with their inspectors? How much more can they do, which they're not doing right now, in helping us become more competent in exportation of products?
So that's basically one of the other ways that you're looking at. Is that something which you want to put into a proposal or suggestion that we try to get that comment in on the bill somehow, or is?
Well, I think if possible, maybe what we could do through Commissioner Tardis is to draft something that we can request the mayor's office to review.
Well, as I mentioned, if I may, sure. As I mentioned in my email that Dot forwarded to everyone, if any commissioner wants the commission to take action and take a position on a bill, I would recommend that commissioner make a statement, make a motion with the language in it, so that the commission can discuss it and approve it, and then that motion, which is really short, just a couple of sentences, then would be forwarded through R&D to the mayor, and then they could move on that, because these things move so fast. If we say, oh, let's draft something and get it back, this horse is gonna be out of barn. So I think if there is a commissioner that wants the commission to take a position on a particular bill, as I encouraged in my email, make a motion that's very specific so that we can talk about it. Yeah, so.
Yeah, no, I think that would be
Thank you,
something
Chair.
that doesn't, do you have an extra comment on that, Jeff?
Yeah, that's one of the core pieces of this, is that if there are a series of specific bills, then we can move them to the mayor's office to get some support. And the mayor doesn't have, he just needs to know what we're doing, and some of this from R&D, if he really feels vested. Sometimes his office does testimony as well, but we just need your direction on a couple of bills that you think are most important for us to voice ourselves on. And the one other thing I would add to this bill is that I think the key for me is that it provides for a quarantining of an island and the products therefrom. So when you establish a quarantine and you say, okay, we're going to quarantine the entire island, nothing moves on this island unless they have been passed or have some kind of certification from the Department of Agriculture that they are free of these things, then it's up to the Department of Agriculture to provide the people on the ground to make sure that that certification works. I mean, if there is a certification process or a cleaning process, then you've got to people it as well, because otherwise it's simply a quarantine that stops things from moving off the island. And it's got to be staged in a way that people have already gotten their certifications before you close it down. I mean, there's a whole series of steps there. And the truth is, it's going to hit the guys who play hard and play professionally. When the last issue came out of Haupu logs shipped to Maui, I think somebody found, not Kauai.
Statewide, actually.
Yeah, and that didn't come through, and that was just loaded up on a pallet and shipped to Youngstown. So, but it does have an effect on everybody. So unless the state's willing to put the money in to do the full deed, it's simply a very dangerous thing to be able to quarantine and stop movement.
I think the real worry we have is this has legs. This can move not only from floriculture, but this is a easy way of creating an embargo on the Big Island, and for that matter, all neighbor islands shipping into population center of Oahu. And so the concern we have is if the department right now is not supporting biosecurity program with its inspection and program, and it's delaying in supporting the biosecurity program, if this law becomes implemented legally, we right now it's putting the cart before the horse, because what happens is it embargoes the Big Island. All industry on the Big Island has to deal with how do we get Department of Ag now with known inspectors to get boots on the ground, get us certified, allowing us to inspect. Otherwise, we cannot even export to Oahu.
And Jeff, I think we were discussing a little bit, a couple of meetings before, that there's some people in the mayor's office that are already making comments, on bills. I don't know if any of this crosses over. Are they all? Is there anyone already working on this?
No, we have, the mayor's office hasn't responded on agricultural bills at this point. And that's why I'm really encouraging us to bring up recommendations so that we can move that and then we can move it quickly.
Right, so as far as we know, as it stands right now.
No, there's nothing on the table that he's been doing ongoing, and that's why it's important that this group
Don't put it on the table.
put it on the table. Let's go, So, and I think that I don't think anybody's gonna argue the intent of this bill. I mean, the intent is to try and slow down what's a terrible thing that's happening. The question is, does the vehicle that they're designing, and when I talked to Scott Enright last Friday, they've been working on an overall biosecurity plan, but what happens is people then start to throw in little pieces that are kind of disconnected from a plan that they just they're kind of become defensive about because it's not part of the bigger plan. It's just picking up pieces of the puzzle, and that's,
So,
That's kind of typical legislative
so
process.
I guess we want to do from here to see if there's any comments that going forward.
Well, Chair, if I may I make a motion just to get
Yeah.
a movement on this? So I move that we request that the mayor look into Senate Bill 2347 and bills such as House Bill 1994 and others, not limited to, that are discriminatory to the Big Island as well as neighbor islands on exporting to Oahu. Furthermore, that the law that goes into act will put us behind an inadequate biosecurity program from the Department of Ag, which we will not be able to competently export from the Big Island.
I think it'd be good if we could try to make a recommendation on a specific bill, say, you want to make this recommendation that you,
Senate Bill 2247?
yeah, say, we want this bill that we modify in a certain way, that you just reject it outright and send it back for reworking next year. Something like that.
And then if I may, HB 1994, and we request, I guess what we would say in the beginning is request that the mayor holds these bills
Right.
For these reasons.
for these reasons.
Okay, yeah, I think that's, yeah, so,
Is that okay?
is that enough of a proposal form, or we need to make it?
I'll second that.
Okay, okay, so
I think we might
I'm going to
specific.
have to rely on that, because I tried to type as fast as I could, but, is the motion now changed? Is the motion for the mayor's office to oppose Senate Bill 2347 and House Bill 1994?
Right,
Okay,
and seconded,
and seconded, okay, great.
and then did you want to add some reasons to it?
And that's what he had said earlier.
First is discriminatory.
Oh.
Second, it would put the neighbor islands at a severe disadvantage, bringing civil liability to growers and exporters that are in good standing, possibly with you.
That's it.
Okay. Yeah,
I'm trying.
Are you there?
Yeah, actually, I got discriminatory, neighbor island disadvantage, civil liability to exporters and growers in good standing.
Yeah, with USDA or Department of Ag at the present time. And also, without having a strong means of having a clean facility such as a free trade zone in Hilo that is a sterile consolidation and
Which they-
consolidation.
without sufficient quarantine facilities.
Okay.
Just keep it simple.
Without
Without
specific
Sufficient quarantine facilities.
facilities to support our export program.
to support.
That sounds.
See, that's good for now.
Okay, so I guess, any further discussion
So
on,
discussion.
on this motion?
I mean, two suggestions. One is, I think, because the nature of the question is a big one, and it's an important one for agriculture generally, it doesn't hurt to start off saying we don't have a problem with the intent of this bill, what it's trying to accomplish. What's wrong, what the problem is, doing it without the resources, it has negative impacts if it's not done without being fully resourced.
So,
The only place we're gonna hit this next is going to be at the Finance Committee, and the Senate bill is moving, and it'll get to the Finance Committee in the House. So it's a resource question.
So that'd be like, I guess you'd answer what you said, insufficient resources to comply, or something like that.
Well, I can add to Jeff. The coffee industry has a quarantine because of the CVP. That was imposed by DOA with insufficient inspectors to inspect the bags. So a lot of the bags early on just sat at the mill.
Right, and then they took away the need for the inspection.
The inspection is still on, but I'm not sure if they laxed the initiative. I also investigated why the quarantine was first imposed, and I couldn't find solid justification that, yeah, the Coffee Berry Board traveled from one island to the other island. No one could provide that information. It was based on a research paper by Jack Armstrong, who was at BBARC. And it was an assumption that the coffee berry borer can live in the green bean.
Let's just go back to.
Yeah, so, I mean, do we have a proposal to add amendment, Jeff is saying, or we maybe make it a little more succinct, no resources available for compliance, or is that wording strong enough?
Can you add that in like the beginning?
Yeah, just that we agree with
We
the intent of the
support
bill.
the intent of the bill, but without sufficient funding and regulatory framework, it will fail for these reasons.
Thank you.
Discriminatory.
That's what I was saying.
Okay, support the intent of the bill and without specific funding and resources.
And regulatory framework, because there's,
Specific
The
funding.
concern we have is Department of Ag is not ready for this.
You know,
They continue to demonstrate that they're not ready with their inactions.
Okay, so then is any other comments, further comments to this?
But also, I think, Eric, what you said about you guys being singled out, that's not fair either.
That's discriminatory.
Yeah.
Covered somewhat. So, okay, then, if there's no further comments, and all in favor of the motion, say aye.
I,
Any opposed? Motion carries. The one bill which I was concerned about, but I didn't know whether you were quoted out was the cottage industry bill, is that still, is that anywhere?
sorry, I don't know if I have it in here.
I think it morphed to a resolution.
Okay.
That's what I mean, I saw a piece in my email at home recently that was talking about a resolution.
Which one was that?
Well,
It's actually not on this list, I apologize.
Yeah, it's-
Cottage industry, but didn't come up under agriculture.
explain it.
Yeah, but in a nutshell, cottage industry says if you're doing something that's basically not likely to cause anyone to get sick, that you can do it in your home kitchen, you can do it in your places, you label it, make sure you sell it directly to a person that can get back to you, so if you get someone sick, you're the one that sold it to them. So that's a very abbreviated nutshell. So that's been gaining traction in Texas, it's been gaining traction across the US. It's kind of a way to get in front of the food safety bills for the small scale. So there was a bill at the state level, and it was getting some interest. And my guess is, I don't know, if you switch to resolution this year, it might be get some, once food safety gets further, it might come back up again. I don't know. But if it was moving, then it was supported, but if it's got to resolution status, then I don't think there's anything to do about it. Or I'm not interested in favor of it. Is there anyone else who has, wants to make any comments on any of the bills that are moving right now? I'd like to have the mayor make comments for us, I guess is what we're doing.
Do you want to, that might be needed.
We're certainly in support of the bill.
What bill number?
1931.
Yeah.
Is that House bill?
HB 1931.
Yeah, I'd like to move to recommend that the mayor support this bill. It's very important to macadamia nut industry that is on its heels, to say the least.
HB 1931,
Built in
and that is
close.
on page 3, macadamia nut trees, macadamia felted toxic.
This is an extremely devastating pest that goes into orchards, and if it's left unchecked, it starts out by diminishing your yields, and then it just simply turns the trees brown and kills them one by one.
So your motion is that the commission recommends the mayor that he support this because of the significance for this island's macadamia nut industry.
Exactly.
Any seconds for that motion?
Second.
Any further discussion on the motion?
I would just add the comment that 1/2 of all of the existing productive croplands on the island is in macadamia. 24,000 acres out of a total of about 47.
Which should add
Yeah, that's just
value
me.
to our comments to support it. Want to lose half your ag industry like that?
Did you want- do you
And
want
where's
to-
it based at this point? Is it throughout the industry?
It is throughout, but it's the worst is in Pahala.
Really?
Yeah. It seems to like the dry climate. It really expands quickly in windy, dry conditions. It floats on the air.
Okay. Do you want to add that to the motion?
No, that's just a background,
That's a
I'll just
background.
use that as meat when I send it up, because it is half of the
Okay,
English.
then, hearing no other comments, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Chair, I'd like to make a motion that the commission recommend to the mayor that he support HB 2468, it's on page 2.
HB 2468?
Yes, HB 2468, agriculture quarantine facility. It authorizes DBED in collaboration with the Department of Agriculture to perform studies and analysis relating to establishing facilities on the island of Hawaii for quarantine inspection and treatment and handling incoming and outgoing commodities. You know, we need to have an overview look at this whole issue. And so this bill, I think, would be a vehicle for doing that. And so, yeah.
Study first.
Yeah, so it's DBED and DOA to do the study, quarantine facilities for inspection and treatment and handling of all incoming and outgoing commodities. So,
For all of us who send stuff out, we know how much gets going out.
yeah.
But that talks about the lack of infrastructure, the lack of
That's
a
right.
system in place to
That's right.
enforce laws.
So my motion is that the commission recommend to the mayor that he support HB 2468 because of its importance to agriculture on this island.
Do we hear a second for that?
Second.
Any further discussion?
The question, is there a Senate partner to that, that you know of?
I could look, but I don't know. It's in the Senate right now, right? Because
Yeah, that's right.
it's heading to WHAM.
Right, but it's not coming back the other way. My question is that if I were to draft a testimony on the first other Senate bill we talked about, I would say, at the end of that, I would say we prefer that you would take up this bill because this bill is about getting a bigger picture. We can write one on this bill specifically, but I would integrate
I see what you're
that
saying. The
as
integration
part
makes
of
a lot of sense. See, that's
yeah.
part of the solution.
The answer is to solve the problem in the bigger picture rather than to.
So our motion on SB 2347, we could add to that and say we would prefer that you take a bigger look at this in the study, which is HB 2468.
Yes.
We don't really need to change the motion, but I'll.
But you
we'll
could
write it
include
way.
that.
Yeah, we're right.
Yeah, you could include that in your.
If you're opposed to one,
instructions.
for another, so it works.
Yeah.
Okay, then, all in favor of the motion of 2468, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that motion also carries. I guess, are there any other further recommendations on legislation to the mayor?
I have one.
Okay.
And it's actually something that I was reminded about on my way over here, and I forgot to include it in here. There's something called governor's messages, which I did not include, GM such and such. Well, there is one that is out there right now, general governor's message appointing Richard Ha to be a member of the Board of Agriculture. And that's GM 598. Governor's Message 598, appointing Richard Ha to the Board of Agriculture. I would like to make a motion to the mayor that he support GM 598, which would be the approval of the Senate for appointing Richard Ha to be a board member of the Board of Agriculture.
That's a reappointment.
Okay, so we have it seconded. Any further comment on that? Seems pretty self.
I think he's on the board, I think.
So it's a
already.
reappointment.
Yeah, and understand that both he and Michelle Galimbo, who are both in the same position of being reappointed.
So we should,
Both, yes, I think you should have both.
we should include them.
And I think that they both come, I mean, just political background, they both come, they've ended their four-year terms, but they were appointed under the Lingle administration, so these are now coming up for reappointment.
Got it.
And I believe that the chair has said basically, get over it. Board ag people are agnostic, they don't follow the political structure. These are really good people and they need to stay on the board. And my understanding that he has the support of the governor for that purpose, but it is, part of that challenge was that this governor would say, I'm going to do something different. And our current director said, these guys are really important people and they've now learned a lot about how to be useful, and now terrible to take them off.
So maybe as a friendly amendment, I could do it to my own motion, that we just say that we encourage the mayor to support the reappointment of Richard Ha and Michelle Galimba to the Board of Agriculture.
I'll stand on second.
So who's seconding? Because I had to know it earlier. To know?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's fine.
thank you. Sorry.
Mike gives, Mike leads the meeting.
Okay, any further comment on this motion? Then take a vote, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? And then the motion carries.
Thank you.
And I think we covered, legislation now, unless there's someone else.
Thank you.
So we have
Thank you.
4 motions.
You know, did you want to ask her, you said you would in the earlier stages, have her comment on her thoughts on the,
On invasive species?
yeah.
Or,
There were two other bills I wanted to.
oh,
pay attention
okay, you can carry it out, okay, that's good, legislation makes sense to do that in.
Okay, and I apologize, these seem a little manini after the list that you guys have gone through, but there is House Bill 1902, which is the No Net Loss Hunting Bill. This is a national campaign by sort of the various sportsmen's associations like the NRA, and it's come to Hawaii in a very similar form as it has to every other state. The only real reason it becomes an ag issue is that it's requiring DLNR to consider replacing any land they take out of hunting areas with other lands, basically purchasing or finding some way to acquire other lands. And the only likely lands to do that are ag lands. So there is that aspect of it, and then also it's my understanding, I believe that feral pig overpopulation has become quite an issue now that there's no longer very large industry supporting regular feral pig control. So this one is moving along pretty well. I believe actually today is the last day to get testimony in, so it's a little bit passed. But in opposition now there's a House concurrent resolution requesting that DLNR and the Department of Ag collaborate to deal with the statewide proliferation of feral pigs. It's interesting because some of the same legislators introduced both pieces of legislation.
What's the HCR?
House Concurrent Resolution 98.
So if I may ask a question, Chair? So what exactly does that mean when you exchange lands, that you want to take ag lands that are mountainous? I'm assuming it's mountainous lands next to forest lands?
I would assume, okay, so the idea is that there's a fear that hunting areas are being taken away for watershed protection.
Correct.
And we believe that's an important thing to do, but I think it's a misconception of how much land is being taken because it's very expensive to fence and remove ungulates from land. So it's a very small portion of the 900,000 acres of public hunting lands that exist right now. So the idea is that if they close an area and fenced it, that they would have to purchase or in some other way acquire through cooperative agreements similar or as good hunting lands. And so really those would be areas probably bordering the forest reserve, which are typically
Pasture lands?
ag lands.
So what does that mean? That means you cooperate with the Department of Ag, fence those pasture lands and then allow hunters to go in and hunt pig?
I don't think it would be fenced, they would just somehow set up an agreement that there would be public access.
But these lands may have cattle on those lands.
Right.
And so you're
Cattlemen
gonna,
do not want,
they don't-
typically,
they don't want
it doesn't work
hunters
out
on their
very
lands.
well.
At least with access, right, this, I mean, this is like giving a hunter mountain access to a rancher's pasture land.
Well, it only happens as part of a cooperative agreement.
Right.
Yeah.
So for instance, some ranches that works very well, like Papapala Ranch has a program where they were able to preserve some of their leases they were losing by agreeing to certain kinds of access. But at any rate, I think the one that may be of more interest in it, it may not be a commission issue, but maybe to the individual commissioners or your related industry associations to throw some support behind the concurrent resolution, just to let them know that there are a significant number of other residents of the Big Island and the rest of the state that are negatively impacted by feral pigs and do not think that there's a shortage of game meat in the island. And that,
Right, so this one bill is trying to basically, in a certain sense, slow down the watershed management, because that's, the issue is that you can't hunt and, well, you want to actually close off the watershed, eliminate it, eradicate it, so you do a lot of hunting to begin with, and then no hunting because you got rid of the pig. And that's the origin of the concern on the bill. From the hunter perspective is, they want to make sure they have more places to hunt.
Access.
It's an access issue.
It's a word, it's an access issue, right?
And at the same time, in certain senses, in Kona, you have this pigs all over the place. They're actually, hunters are held in high esteem coming, I don't know, they trap or whatever they can legally do to get rid of pigs. It's a constant discussion. So it's not necessarily that they're losing access to food because it's too much of it.
Right.
And the second bill, what's this second bill?
The resolution is requesting that DLNR and DOA collaborate to control the statewide proliferation of feral pigs. And it has its typical resolution preamble with some background about the pig problem in the state. And there's some factual issues there, but it's, the intent is in the right place. And just.
So that's an invasive species control on one end, and it's a hunting access on the other end, so it kind of related.
The Bill 1902 really does not address access, it addresses total acreage. And the problem with it is that DLNR, there's a third bill, it was really the budget request from DLNR asking for $750,000 to improve access and to create new cooperative agreements to make that happen so that hunters will get more areas and more accessible areas. A lot of areas that will be closed for watershed protection are, of course, the most remote and pristine areas that most of hunters are not getting into right now anyway. The places where folks are complaining they can't get pigs anymore are areas like the section between Steinbach and Saddle Road, where everyone in Hilo goes to hunt, and it's already fairly degraded forest in some of those areas. It's not going to be part of the watershed fencing plan for a long time.
Okay, so from the invasive species point of view, are these bills you're supporting or opposing, or?
So we are opposing Bill 1902, and we are supporting HCR 98.
So I guess then we go back to the commission, see if there's any stance that we want to take on this bill, whether this is more like an informational thing, because especially considering the testimony is pretty much.
I understand the partial argument about how it could impact agriculture, but I don't think it's that significant impact on agriculture. And if anything, if the law would get passed and the hunters would be allowed to trade acre for acre of fenced areas for unfenced areas, or access to more remote areas. In some ways, that could impact ag lands in Kona, for example, because they're going to go up there instead of in your MacNut orchard to get their pig. But hunters tend to be somewhat, conscientious of their gas money and time, and they're going to go get the easy pigs first. So I don't think it's going to impact the ag industry that much. Access to pasture, I don't think they're going to. The state's going to go to the land division, deal in our land division, and say, okay, we got this cow pasture over here, been under lease for 20 years. You have to now let hunters go in because we took 10,000 acres out over here for a natural reserve. I doubt if that would happen.
It would have to be a cooperative agreement.
Yeah. So I think, again, it's a premature bill, and I'd be surprised if it passes. But I think the hunters need to have their say too, because I know with the sheep eradication on Mauna Kea, significant sheep hunting area is now gone. I know one state agency has approached another state agency, can we have some of your land to hunt sheep? Why? You're the largest landowner in the state, why would you need some more? So, I would suggest we don't take any action on this. I don't think it's going to pass. I understand the issues, but I don't think it's an agricultural.
So basically, appointing information ends up in our minutes then, I think.
Yeah.
I apologize, I forgot one component because it was a recent amendment, but they, instead of requiring the one-for-one, they asked DLNR to consider it and put in that there would be a hunting advisory commission. And I think they need a hunting advisory commission. That's probably a good idea because it does give hunters a voice. But there is no agricultural representative on that commission in the current layouts. That might be one suggestion that could be made, that it should have at least one representative from agriculture.
Yeah, so we get some conversation on that board about
Right, so it's not
gear
just the ones.
importations for the.
And that was, I think the last election, that was, might be what was voted in the last election.
Yeah, Chair, I was just gonna make a comment that, I mean, if it is an ag issue, let's make it one. If it's not, then we don't. But I guarantee you that this is a two-committee referral. And the other referral is the hunting commission, which is also it's a county-managed, mayor-supported effort. And so the mayor would be in a difficult circumstance if you get a strong recommendation on this and then it's got to, I mean, he'll just make his decision on it, but he also will consult, before he did anything, he'd want to consult that other group. And I don't know if they're focusing on legislation or not, one way or the other, but I don't think he would unilaterally take the action of this commission without consulting the Hunters Commission, which is up and running.
This is no proposals and motions like that, so that becomes a point of information, and we can move on to the next item on the agenda.
Is it appropriate to ask Commissioner Overall a question on the CDB House bill? Because of my position in getting federal grants, I'm prohibited from doing legislation. So I've been kept up with it, and I'm not sure what this CBP House bill is all about.
Which one is that?
1514, first page.
Yeah. To me, the CBD problem is an important issue on the island, but I can't say anything one way or the other about that House bill.
Question is why?
Is the bill to just subsidize the farmers? Like
The paper.
the paper says? Or is it more in line with the other bills that have already passed where they will help the farmers do mitigation, but it does require detailed performance metrics? I don't like subsidy bills, that's one thing, because you have to perpetuate it forever or it doesn't pan out. But I'm not sure exactly what this bill is, because I have to stay away from legislation. You don't know?
Well, I think it is trying to give money directly to the farmers to buy the spray, which is incredibly expensive, but the process for signing up or getting in line to get some of that money is gonna be very interesting, to say the least. It's gonna be a struggle to get in the top of the line to get that money, because and I know, Lori, that spray is very costly stuff. And if you're doing your job, you're spraying it every month. How many acres you got, Lori?
What?
How many acres
I
do
have
you?
12 acres.
12 acres, so you're spending, if you're doing it once a month, you're spending over $1,000.
Or $37 per gallon.
Right, and it's about a gallon, what is it, a gallon?
Quart per
A
acre.
Quart per acre, yeah. It's incredibly expensive.
Plus expense for, hire the guy to spray, which is $50 an hour.
Yeah.
One of the toxic nature of getting rash, I asked USDA if they could investigate it, because one of the things they're doing is using silicone-based surfactant. And silicone itself can be an irritant. It may not be the Bovaria itself, maybe the surfactant that's doing all the problems.
And that's for is it an organic version and non-organic?
There's an organic and non-organic.
Like the fungus
Micro-
sprays, they have both, but the surfactant,
Might be one or not the other.
silicone-based.
Silicone base can be very irritant, to your skin. So I'm just wondering if a lot of the rash problems coming up is not because of the Bulgaria, which everybody's blaming, but it may be the problem with the surfactant that's being used. So I've asked Crop Production Services to look into water-based surfactant and work with Microworks, who's the distributor of the Bavaria.
I know that Bavaria came up at the farmers meeting, at the Farm Bureau meeting, and they were talking again about being able to manufacture your own, which I think was a question of, I don't know whether there's any traction on that idea or not.
I think you can't take, because it's live, you can't actually put it into compost teas and then create your own. You go create other things too, which are actually might be beneficial. It's a whole different theory of how to operate in agriculture. But I've definitely heard of people trying to, throw it in with your compost tea, because it's a microbial brewing system. And if you put the right nutrients in, which is basically molasses or which you already put in, like seaweed, then it should multiply it. I don't know if anyone's actually looking at a microscope to see if it is multiplying it, or whether if they do spray that out.
What is the implication of growing your own?
Well, the implication of growing your own is if you use it on a commercial orchard, it has to be certified or registered. And that is very costly. I talked to Microworks, who talked to the manufacturer of Botanic Garden and Microtrol. And you almost need a certified kitchen, because what you have to certify is there's no contaminants mixing in your product. And the facility that's doing the commercial is over $1 million. I'm not sure anybody in Hawaii is gonna fund that.
We're talking coffee, right?
Coffee,
Yeah.
coffee board.
It gets cooked, boiled.
No,
This
what
is
the thing is, the green bean is being
Spray.
sold. That's 50% of sales is the green bean, not the roasted.
So what it is, you get less yield, because it attacks the bean. And so you lose the beans just because it's eaten, or you lose the beans because it's half eaten, and goes a little bit further in the process.
He was referring, I think, differently than you were saying.
Yeah, I'm just
About
saying, it
the,
sounds like $1 million to do what? A product that we put in our bodies after it's been cooked and boiled and
No, the CBB
what
does
contaminants
have,
could survive that?
the CBB does have problems in that the Specialty Coffee Association of America has a grading standard that's international by 40 countries. And one of the standard has to do with, there's two categories. Category 1 allows only 5 infested bean in the sampling, something like 2%. And a category 1 damaged by CBB is anything that has a real hole or part of it's eaten already. Category 2 allows 10 defects, CBB pinholes. Okay. If you have 5 or 50 of those, then you fail the category 2 issue. The other thing is a CBB has reduced extra fancy and fancy in Kona to almost 0. It's increased prime from about 6% to probably 60%. You go below prime, you can't call yourself Kona coffee, or you can't call yourself Kahu coffee, because only a specialty coffee can have a regional name or brand. So that's where Kona is right now. They're on the verge of losing Kona coffee. It's a big issue.
It's huge.
So to get back to Bill, though, your question is, this is being looked at as that you just keep paying people to spray it. Once they take that money away, then they'll stop spraying it, and it's not really a solution to it.
There's no solution, especially if you don't keep any type of metrics. You don't know what the success of that money is.
I think one of the things he said in the past is that I think about the estimates of 10 or 20% of the control is in the spray, 80% is in the management of the
That's
field.
right.
So if you get subsidized are you managing your field? Are you only subsidizing the people who are responsibly taking the other steps? And I think that's one of the things that happened before, was people were doing it, spraying it, thinking I'd done my share, but they didn't put their work in the field.
They thought the Bavaria was gonna be the silver bullet.
Right, and it's only about 20% of the
That's
fish.
how you get in front of the line, right?
Yeah.
You do your 80%.
Well, we developed an IPM that's been approved by USDA, UH, and the industry. And for us to give them free Bavaria, they have to follow the IPM and have to turn in a survey of monitoring their field. So it's almost like a voucher system. You don't turn in that survey, you don't get the free Bavaria.
So this is probably be no particular motion in this bill.
No, I just wanted
So this is
to
more like
find out.
an informational, and that gets read into our minutes. And I think, is there any other legislative related comments, or should we raise on this? Okay, so we'll move up to the microloan update. Most of the action on the microloan update has been really with Jeff talking to finance, with you talking to, just going to the website and getting better exploration on it. I've had some informal conversations with council members because they happened to be at the Brew Fest and we had a stand there, so they came and talked to me about it. And I believe from talking with Jeff, trying to explore a little bit more, see if they need a intermediate entity that's based on the island or not, to have the funds go to a nonprofit or extend to the second nonprofit, or, so basically exploring what would be the best avenue to work with them on. And I still think we need to explore it further if we, get a couple of options, then probably go check with the mayor and see if he wants to go further. But do you have more comments on it?
Well, I would just report, Don's not here. Don did have a conversation with the director of finance. I think the concept of, as originally written, it was the county was going to be involved in doing this, kind of put some match into it. And the more transactional involvement, the harder that is for the county. So if it was structured around some kind of a grant proposal to a nonprofit who was going to be involved in doing that could be part of, say, the supplemental grant program. And if somebody said, let's take 25 grand, put it into they've developed a way to, and an investor who will develop some microloaning programs through a Kohala Center structure. So they have a person who's just been hired, interesting background, attorney from DC, actually working in Kohala in Waimea, whose job it is to build this up. Now what they haven't done is develop their systems yet. So they're not quite ready to go live, but that's what she is directed to do. So whether you use the Kiva system, whether you use another system, I think the idea of being able to get the county involved in some of that's not out of the question. And I think your conversations here have been useful in helping to bring that potential to the table. And how do you do it? Still not clear how.
Okay, so I think what we can do is work with you more closely in the committee and keep, we're doing pretty well keeping each other informed as you make steps. So I think we're keeping committee. What I intend to do within the next month then is explore actual structural ways that get structural potential ways that could work. I'm in conversation with Kiva and Feed the Hunger Foundation also, which is another nonprofit, which also does microloans. And then see if I can come up with a couple of structural choices and possibly get the mayor involved too and say, okay, here's some structural choices so that we, see if we want to pursue those. Because I think once we have something that works, that's working, I think it can move pretty fast. It's pretty simple. And so at some point I think there's going to be a conversation from the head of Kiva and whoever the point person will be in the county and say, here's our concerns, can we make them work?
Right. And I think that there is a route that could float on the supplemental grant funding that we do annually, that the proposal could come in from a nonprofit for that purpose, and that would be one existing route for that. And then the other routes are a little less certain. You would go to the council and say, is there, you guys never do that. But getting the details of how it works is going to be the key as to whether or not it survives in any way.
And the one detail which one put out from talking with Keith is, what they'd like to see formed on the island is a group of about 12 to 14, what they call trustees. So that's actually where, if you want to get a loan, you have to get a trustee. Basically, you're going to get someone to vouch for you. You got to get a person who's going to vouch for you. You have one person who did it for me right now. I definitely encourage, anyone in the commission, especially people like Eric or I, who both deal with a lot of small growers, to say, okay, let's go ahead and sign up to be trustees for it. This is the independent, it's not paid, it's volunteer. And if they can get a network of trustees that are in different areas of agriculture, then if they have someone who wants to get a loan in that area, it makes sense to go to someone who's a trustee in that area. So anyhow, that's what Keep is looking to do. They're looking to create an on-the-ground, on the island network of trustees, because that's how they vet their loans before it even goes to Kiva. If you can't get the trustee to say, hey, this is a good idea, then Kiva's not even going to look at it.
And that's been a fairly successful program, like for about a decade or something, right?
They're handling a lot of money on it.
And I just gifted my significant others in my family some kivas for Christmas, and
Oh, okay.
and they really got off on it. I mean, if you're not into that, it's kind of cool.
What do you
$50.
mean you're gifting them some?
I gave them $50, and then they invested in some third world business operation that's been vetted by a trustee in that country, and they get their money back, and they get their reinvested, and it just supposedly keeps going.
Yeah, the community side is strong. That's where I've been trying to work with Kiva to see if I can't focus that community action within our island, within our ag community. Within our ag community. But it's also, if you model in the ag community, they're totally open for all kinds of other businesses also. It's just, my focus has to be agriculture. Kiva's not focused on agriculture per se. They're focused on any small business economic development. And I think that's got potential to spread outside agriculture. Okay, so I think as far as where we're going with this, no need for motions or proposals. I think we'll just work on the next step and see if we come up with something that we can make happen.
I would recommend that the commissioners go on the website, check it out, and I did, and it's really interesting, and there's a lot of stuff going on, and like the chairman said, it's not just ag, it's any small business. And someone just puts a business plan up, and then wait for the trustees to start sending money, and we build up to $2,500 or $5,000, and then.
Yeah, 2,500 to 5,000 comes quickly, which is, I think, is going to help a lot of people that I work with. You move up to 10, you'll probably get it. You try to go for 15 or 20, you gotta have a good idea. And you gotta have a good track record. Okay, so the next item on our agenda is if there's requests from commissioners for such things as forming committees, any idea for public or government officials for next meeting, and then new business agenda items. So that's, I guess we'll just put on the table. Troy, you have anything you'd like to add?
Well, I'd like to certainly have a discussion.
Excuse me, can we go backwards? I apologize. According to Deputy Director Sean Mendes, the actual microloan permitted interaction group or committee that was created, the last meeting, it identified the committee and identified the members. However, it did not identify the mission, the specific language of the mission. Therefore,
We need to do that.
So we can amend that so that this pig, if you will, can continue, correct?
Yeah, although you don't need to do a permitted interaction group when there are only 2 members.
Right.
So, and all you did last time was Troy and the chair. And so, in a sense, you really didn't create one. You don't have to redo this because you only got 2 guys in it. You didn't need to create it. But if you want to carry on that way, then you just got to revisit that and be very clear what the purpose of it is. So, I mean, and that's all. It needs to be in the minutes for that.
Well, the purpose now is
kind of what you said, is to find that structure that's gonna work, that's gonna be a feasible idea.
And if you just want to continue on, the two of you guys carrying the conversation forward and doing that, then you don't need to have, you know, you operate, you don't need the
We don't need to
formal.
And you, if you did the formal, you would not be able to bring up anyone else onto the committee, because you had already identified its members and it can't be changed once it's.
So what it sounds like is you can continue on as you're planning, and
We can disband the PIG, or you can continue the PIG, but identifying the mission today.
Yeah.
But you don't need to have the PIG, because it's only the two commissioners.
Right now, we have no pigs, basically.
Yeah, you don't.
But if we want to
But you
create
did
pigs,
have a
we
motion
have
to
a-
create
we have
a permitted interaction group.
We created one
Last week, and all I would say is that it may not be necessary, given the trajectory of it. So you could just move to undo that formal structure and continue the informal structure that you've got. It's kind of a bureaucratic jump.
yeah, no, it's definitely confused. But, so we would have to make a motion, either to make a mission statement, or we need to make a motion to just, you know, to.
Disband.
Continue without pigs.
Disband the pig.
Clarification before we entertain a motion, if I may. The mission statement would be for any kind of, what do you call it?
PIG, no, for that specific one.
So anytime we want to form a PIG, we have to create a mission statement first, then we form the PIG to address that mission statement, and then we form more than 2 members on that PIG. Is that correct? That'd be the way to do it.
Thereabouts. Thereabouts. I think you're coming up with the committee idea and the mission of that committee, identify its members, and then they move
I don't
forward.
know if we need a motion, but I would suggest we just wait until we want to form a PIG, and then we follow the procedure for doing that.
Okay, then do we need a motion, then
No,
obviously, we need a motion
because
to disband the one
I
that's
think
got-
so. You need a motion to disband what you had created
And then we call
due
it,
to the lack of a mission identified. That's it.
and then just carry on informally then, what's the?
More?
Okay, so last time you actually formed a PIG, right? Only you didn't really because you only had 2 guys, right?
No, they didn't really, because they didn't create
So we
a
don't need to
mission.
take any action on pigs unless we want to create one today.
The PIG was identified and created, but it lacked a mission, so today either the mission gets identified or the PIG gets disbanded.
I move we dismanage your pig.
Okay, then we still can make reports back, or then
Sure,
what's the interaction?
Yeah, because there's only 2.
Is that like?
Second for
As long as we continue what we're trying to do, then it's fine with
Right,
me.
yeah.
Okay,
So the motion is by Commissioner Robinson to disband this microloan permitted interaction group.
And let me amend that if I may. And allow our 2 members to continue their microloan efforts.
Second.
okay, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No, so motion carries. Now, informal, unpicked.
Unpaid.
Unpaid microloan group.
Sorry, there's so much specifics.
No, that's what they're there for. Okay, I guess, any other pigs that Okay, no other pigs. Any other public, or government officials that we want to bring into the next meeting? So we probably should wait and see what our response is to what we just sent. And any other new business items that people want to add to the next meeting?
Only that under old business, I'm still working on the PowerPoint. Kelvin Silaki still hasn't finished on floor control ornamentals, so it's not like I'm avoiding it, it's just unfortunately I'm remiss in my
So no one here, that's why I can't.
Yeah, and I think, Chair, I talked to Corporation Counsel, and this is what she approved on number 11. Commissioner industry updates and a presentation, so that in the event either one of you go on a room and you had something to say, that was Jeff's suggestion and Corporation Council's approval, that this was a way to handle it
So we have-
going forward, instead of identifying every meeting.
Yeah, so we have that now in item 11, gives us a chance in the presentation, is available from the commissioner, we have a way to put it in, or it's already in. We just want to know about it.
One of the things I thought would be useful in that item though was that it gave everybody a chance just to say what's going on in your world that it might be of use, so that there was a place in the agenda where you could do that and people could update each other. And if it was a bigger presentation, so be it, you can actually identify that, but in this case, you could go around the room and say,
And I think we
here's two
should,
things.
I didn't think we had something that was sent to us, not this, we need to go to council, but notice that the organic industry report came out, that was Kohala Center, I think we all. Yeah, I think did we send?
I sent that to you, I can't
All right,
remember what it
I picked it up from somewhere, so I read it, but I didn't know if it came
Yes.
through, you or not.
Is that correct? We sent it up to them?
Did you?
Yeah.
I can't remember.
I don't remember.
I don't think
Sure. Did you get the
Organic.
Grow Organic, anybody get the Grow Organic report?
No.
Because that was, I meant to update you on that, but they did just, Koala Center did just publish a Grow Organic report, which is a product of about a year-long, working group and a conference and a survey of organic industry players. You were involved in the working group? And,
I might, some level, I wasn't like way high level, I definitely answered, being a distributor, we answered questions, I think we might have answered more of the questions.
Okay, but I think it was, part of the challenge is for the organic industry to start to have its own voice and focus. And so there are some 50 different recommendations in that, not many of them related specifically to the county, but a lot of it having to do with the desire to get a local certification body. And so it's worth a read because they help you understand what that community of folks in the organic community felt were important issues. And
What's the next step in that? So that was, the report was made, that was commissioned by the county to have the report made, or is that?
no, I think it was a USDA grant that Kohala Center had that was a specialty crop project. And that's what funded the conference and some of the other things that they did. And
So is there any other, per se, next steps at the county level, or there's some things in there that mention that the county?
well, it might be something that you want to have a presentation by either they or somebody representing that collective effort, just to talk about what are the things that are really driving in our organic industry today. And that may be a product for a future conversation, because I think they're.
So that's something you could possibly agendize if you got, say, Frank or one of the other people did the report, because that would be organic and to a large extent of the sound that's smaller growers, but it's not limited to that, because it's diverse in what they're asking for. I have to look at it more carefully and see what they're asking the county for, because, that's kind of where our focus is. But, okay, I know that we discussed it, I figured it's a good thing you mentioned it.
One thing, they did pick up the recommendation that Iligan's, reduced tax structure, but I think that conversation will come up in a broader conversation about real property taxes.
That's what GET
Which-
exemption. Like the GET exemption, that's.
No, this was a real property tax, giving organic guys the lowest level of real property taxes, but, as you had mentioned to me earlier, it's so hard if you're gonna be certified, you gotta be certified every year, you gotta prove your certification every year, that's gotta be timed with the tax process. And it also starts to separate out, farmers who are not certified and others practicing
Right.
organics, and it creates some.
Legal certification can be both, you just have to keep them separate, so they have that issue on top of it.
Right, so, but I do think for your next meeting, my hope is that there'll be some conversation on real property taxes, so just, I'll let you know more about that as it emerges.
In this last meeting, I want to find out what Commissioner Tanoy talked about a PowerPoint for the industry. What's the requirement?
No requirement, just a request that our organization start educating the commission about our different commodity groups. So we had a presentation, a really good one by Commissioner Tim Richards, 2 meetings ago, I think it was. Right? Yeah, it was really good, so it kind of inspired me to try and get Kelvin to do one for us. sort of like, maybe not as good as Tim's.
Right, Tim set the high bar.
Yeah, Tim is like, oh, intimidating, his presentation was really well done on cattle, and from historic to modern day, the vision of ranching in Hawaii. So I thought we'd just at least get to first base, just get a little bit of historic and basic update on who and what we do. So I'm pushing Calvin, today I will push him, I'm pushing today.
And then,
But what it does is it opens up the potential for any commissioner to do one, so if there's something in your shack or others that you want to bring it up, then it's a matter of just scheduling it.
Yeah, and I offered one on forestry, and I was gonna ask the question, what would you wanna hear about? But I'm hearing a little bit of history and kind of where we're at and where we hope to go. I'm more than willing to share that. The minutes also talked about the non-legacy program. That, in entirety, it has less to do with agriculture, because it's a very mixed plate of conservation, agriculture, homesteading, watershed, the whole bit. But in that I could focus on gorse, for example, and how serious the gorse issue is. I don't think people really understand where gorse came from and how the potential of Hamakua becoming gorse country, like Mono Road is very real. And I think as agriculturalists, you need to understand that it's a controllable invasive species, but it needs attention. We can't ignore it like we did fire ant 5 years ago.
okay, so, what I'll do with this agenda, anyone has the presentations that are ready, and just let me know, say like at least 2 weeks before the meeting, and then.
So I'm ready. I give these
Okay.
every quarter probably to our commission, to other folks. I gave the gorse presentation to the Hunters Advisory Group. That's a canned thing, just bring it in, set it up, and go through it again. So if you want me to do something next week, or next time, you tell me what you want, and I'll do it.
Okay, so I'll look and see, like, if there's any competing ones, just right now, I don't see nothing.
Next meeting, we'll be in Kona.
Yeah, it's just gonna confirm, the next meeting is.
Well, why don't I volunteer to do the one after that then?
Okay. And then our next meeting is in Kona, and we have the room.
And that is this, the April 15th
Popular day.
at the
Yeah.
Liquor
Yeah.
Control Conference Room in Kona.
Same room, second floor.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think that we're actually ready for a adjourn, so.
So moved.
Oh. That was a great video.
One move.
Second.
Okay. So,
Ronnie, you get brownie points for moving second. Just
Oh, is that
say
right? How many brownie points do I need before Jeff guarantees me a grant?
Did we vote, by the way? We don't need
I'm not sure more than
The
adjourn.
meeting is adjourned at
I think 12.
12:01.
Yeah.
A lot of attorneys on my.
Now, sandwiches over there, please help me.